Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello, everyone, and welcome along to a special edition of the RTÉ GAA podcast. This week, we're joined by former Dublin footballer Noel McCaffrey, who you may have heard has been bringing forward a motion. It'll go before Congress through his club, Clontarf, that is going to make it mandatory, I guess, for players to have to play 4 competitive league games in order to be eligible to play for their counties. That's the sort of nuts and bolts of it. But Noel, thanks a million for being with us. Give us a sense of where this idea came from and why you wanted to bring this motion forward.
Okay, Jacqui, thanks for having me. I'm delighted to be here. So I suppose I've been labouring a long time on this issue. It's very important to me. And the issue being that over the years, the frequency with which county players play for their clubs has just diminished progressively. It happened dramatically between the 90s and the noughties. Where in Dublin, where my experience is, the players went from being available to playing all league games to being available to playing none, despite the fact that there was no change in either the number of club league games played or the number of county league or championship games played. So it started a process which really, I think, has been fundamentally unhealthy for the GAA. And when I was then involved as a manager in my local club, Clontarf, we had an awful time trying to get access to our county players, and so did every club. And it was extremely frustrating, unfair to clubs, particularly emerging clubs in the lower leagues, who were trying to make progress up the ranks to become competitive in the championship by getting into Division 1 of the league. And they were being undermined, I suppose is the only way to put it, by having their great players removed from them as soon as they became great. And it's also, I think, the second key point, apart from the unfairness, is it violates the core essence of the GAA, which in my view should be for these iconic players to be playing on big stadiums and this week and then playing in the local park next week with their friends and their family and the kids touching them and talking to them and all that. And I also believe it's actually unhealthy for the players to be in that bubble all the time. And I suppose the fourth point is that I think the real challenge for the GAA linked with this trend is the drift towards professionalism.
Yeah.
And that's a serious threat as well. And then, so I have had so much frustration, not me alone, but so many club managers of trying to get reasonable access to players over the years, and we just never got anywhere. And then the split season arrived, which was touted as, and correctly touted as, solving the club championship uncertainty issue, the fixtures bit. It did fix that. But by handing over 8 months of the season, which is the case, from January to July plus December as a pre-season month, to the county scene, the players had ever seen in that period. So it exacerbates the separation of players from their clubs, and it has made it worse. It has made that problem worse.
Is there going to be a divide, though, Noel, between let's say you're a club manager, so you understand, or have been, and you understand what the nuances are there. The county managers obviously have a very different vibe on it. And clearly in your household, not only are you a former Dublin footballer, but your children, Jack and Sarah, both inter-county players and have been through this. So I don't know what the players will feel and what the inter-county managers will feel, because certainly chatting to any of the players, they love playing for their clubs. The county managers love for people to play for their clubs, but equally they want them all the time too. So there is going to be a bit of frustration here.
You're right, there is. And they're all good people.
Yeah.
They're all GAA people, as are the county board officials. So if you think of it, there are probably 4 maybe stakeholder groups, let's call them that. There's the clubs, there's the inter-county players, there's the inter-county management, and there's the county board, all of them, let's say, right? And whenever this issue gets discussed, the group that gets blamed for causing the problem is the clubs, for having the cheek almost to ask for their players, when all the clubs want is fairness. Now, and I think where you have groups where everybody is naturally looking after the job they've been given to do, that what needs to happen to solve this, if you stand back from it, it is fundamentally, blatantly, obviously unfair. But to solve it, it needs a set of regulations and rules that everybody plays by. And that deals with it. Otherwise, quite naturally, the county board officials are sort of in a difficult situation of in any way going against the county managers. The county players will do what the county managers say. It's a tricky one, and it's understandable at each local interest level about what the behaviour is. But fundamentally, I believe that the hierarchy of the GAA, which includes the county boards, their fundamental role is to serve the association and to serve those units that they are meant to serve. And that includes equally the clubs. And unfortunately, what has happened over the years, this incessant trend towards increased commitment at county level, increased money in it, increased fear of losing or whatever, the clubs have just got squeezed, and it's just not right. And it is profoundly damaging in the long run, in my view, to the GAA, because the unique feature of the GAA nationally and internationally is our visceral link with the community.
Yeah.
That is what is special. And what's happening is that has been dismantled.
Yeah.
Not intentionally necessarily, but somebody has to stand back and say, this has to stop.
Yeah. The thing is, though, Rory, and I know you are a club chairman, so I'll couch this in a way that I know you're obviously dealing with this from the other side.
Yeah.
Rules, as Noel says, are there to be followed, but that has not necessarily been the case in the GAA. And as much as people might say this is a great idea, policing it is an entirely different issue, which has been a problem in the GAA.
That will be a challenge, I'm sure. And look, Noel has already articulated that is potentially a job for the rule makers and lawmakers. And look, I can declare a massive conflict of interest here. I was in the room at County Convention the night that this motion got passed by Dublin. I voted in favour, as did, I think, memory serves, was 180 people in the room, and I think something like 176 delegates, club delegates, voted in favour of this. Jacqui, your own club, Kilmacud Crokes, were relegated out of Division 1 a couple of years ago. Like, you had a farcical situation in Dublin club football where the Kilmacud Crokes men's 1 and 2 teams were in the same league because their top team were relegated from Division 1 because they had no access to county players. This is something that's going to affect a lot of clubs, particularly in Dublin. People might say, oh, you've no county players out where ye are. Why should you care? Well, we don't yet. And look, if we look at the situation, and they say all politics is local, and if I bring it back home, we're in Division 1 this year in Dublin. Now, we have two players, one on the fringes of the Dublin senior panel and one that will absolutely play Dublin 20s. They won't be available to us, and it will be a massive challenge for us to stay in this division. And to put that into context, Skerries Harps were relegated out of Division 1 last year with 12 points. They had 5 wins, 2 draws. They had 12 points. Now, they were shorn of Greg McEnany and the 2 McGuinness brothers for large chunks of that campaign. Those 3 lads are available for a much more a much longer period. There's a very good chance Skerries Harps start 2025 in Division 1 as opposed to Division 2. So to go back to Noel's point, it does act as a stunt, as it does create a block for clubs to try and push on to the next levels. I suppose where it might be slightly more interesting from Noel's perspective and I love his views is in Dublin, we take club football very, very seriously up here. And there could be potentially a little bit of a discrepancy around different parts of the country where league football isn't exactly the same. There's not the same weight put on it. So if you're going to go in and ask for 4 league games that a player is to play, and they might say somewhere around the country, well, we don't really take the league that seriously, so we don't really care. Is that an issue, Noel, do you think?
It is. And just to reflect a little bit on what you said there, Jacqui, the last time a team in Dublin now, outside of the top half of Division 1, contested, never mind won, contested a senior football county final was 40 years ago.
Yeah.
I was born in it. and it is different in Dublin, actually, in fairness, because to be competitive in the senior championship, you have to be in Division 1 of the league. That's what the figures show. It may not be the case elsewhere. And there are counties, as we've discovered in our going about now, where there is a commitment to playing league football. There's this Star Games model which applies in Tyrone, it applies in Monaghan, and there are other counties, smaller counties, I think it's like Leitrim and Longford, where because of the small numbers, there is actually an arrangement where the club league games don't get played without the counties. Now, my view on that is that, which is great, I think that's fantastic news, but since those counties are doing it anyway, I would hope that they would
support it
in putting it into law. It might mean a small tweak in their scheduling, but the bigger principle though is this or is this not the right thing to do? That's the bottom line. And I'm trying to sell this on the principle rather than the detailed implementation, and that the detailed implementation will come from the work of a committee that will be put together to implement it. And that committee would then confer widely and discuss things locally. I mean, it was very funny. I got really, really great feedback from some of the county secretaries, one of whom said to me, "Noel, do you not realise it's wet in the west of Ireland? And we couldn't possibly play club hurling matches before the middle of March." To which I had to say, "You're dead right."
Yeah.
There should be no hurling played before March anyway.
That's why they built the dome, and then the dome blew away, you know?
But the point is, though, like, everybody we've spoken to feels this is a good idea in principle.
Yeah.
And I feel very, very strongly about this, that this is serious enough that it's almost a mission to rescue the GAA from a direction of travel which is fundamentally harmful to the core identity of the GAA. And the other thing about this is that, and the most emotional aspect of this that was picked up on in Dublin clubs was the gross unfairness to the clubs and to the fringe players on matchday squads.
Yeah.
So 24, 5, 6, who never get to play, go to every match. They play none of them, or very rarely, and they don't play with their clubs either. So you have these very, very talented players who are getting neither county games nor club games at hurling or football. And it was a particular issue in club hurling in Dublin. And that touched a chord which was, some clubs feel very, very angry about this. And without us really appreciating it, it became an opportunity for those clubs to have a voice on this in particular. Now, I'm obviously more interested in, well, not more interested in, but I'm equally interested in the regular first team county players also playing with their clubs for the reasons I said. And I don't think it would harm anyone for that to happen. In fact, it would enrich it, and it would not involve any increased workload or any increased risk of burnout or injury, because the games they would be playing with their clubs would be replacing county activity of these AB matches or whatever would go on, and not an addition to them.
Would the county managers be okay with that though, Noel? Because that's obviously a different standard than what they may feel they're getting in those AB games inside in a county squad.
Well, I think there's two aspects to this. One is that I feel actually that county managers could be quite positive about this, provided they would feel genuinely that their county was not disadvantaged. In other words, that they weren't the only ones doing it. Now, that I think is an important point, and that's why it needs to be a coherent national thing. The other element to it is that there is a trend, obviously, towards county games becoming more and more professional, with more and more backroom team, more and more scientific input into it. And it is true that that would be reined back if this proposal goes through. And I think that would be a fantastic development, because the trend that is happening is going only one direction, and that is professionalism. And that needs to be turned back. That's not
44. Tom Ryan's report came out there, obviously, this week, Noel. 44 million euros spent on intercounty budgets in the year just gone. Like, it's an extraordinary sum of
it is
money.
amazing. It is amazing. And where could that money go? Obviously, it mightn't come because it's sponsorship. Maybe somebody. It mightn't come if what I want to see happen or what my club wants to see happen happens. But there's a choice to make. There's a choice to be made by the association about fundamentally what direction do we want to go. And if we don't do anything about this, it's only going one direction. And to digress slightly, in a few years' time, we will have a joint ladies and men's association. And you're aware, Jacqui, that at the moment there is a significant number of female intercounty players tripping over and back between here and Australia.
Mhm.
They play Aussie rules over there, they play intercounty football over here, they go back for Aussie rules, and they play little or no club football. In other words, and where is the opportunity, if that becomes a bigger trend, for local players to feel they have a chance to get a county jersey if it's being offered to people who are not playing with their clubs? The county jersey and a place.
Noel, would you see this rule coming in? So not just exclusively for men. This is right across the board. This is
in due course. I would obviously like to see that happen. But this is for senior men's, and this motion is not even addressing the underage men's issue, which is equally bad, because once somebody, and I was through this whole process, once somebody joins a development squad, there's just
there's a transfer out. We would always consider if somebody goes to Dublin, and particularly if they go for a long period, it's effectively a transfer out.
Well, it's not so much. Well, I don't. Well, maybe that's one way of looking at it. But my point is that there is this. It mightn't even be thought of as this, or even realised that this is what's happening. But there's this systematic, progressive separation of that player from his club. The subtle or the overt message is, you now belong with Dublin, not with your club.
Yeah.
And that,
which is the opposite of what the players actually want and what they say.
well, yes. Now, that's interesting. I'm not sure that may be truer for older players rather than younger players. I think there is
maybe.
I think there is because this is now becoming so normal.
Mm-hmm.
There's almost an understanding among maybe young intercounty players that this is correct, this is right, that I don't.
Well, in fairness,
they know
no,
no
they probably,
difference.
but they do. You're right, Rory. They do what
they
they're
know.
told. That's in essence, Noel, and that's because it's professional. Like, you chat to any of these young county players, most of them have grown up in that club. They're in that area. That's the place that they love. They've done what they're told, but then to progress, they now do what they're told by a different master. And I understand what you're saying about the push-pull, but I still think if you asked the core of them, where did they feel they were made, they would say they were made at home.
Yeah. And what I'm hoping is that this will reinforce that attachment. They wear their club identity with pride and bring it to the county scene, and then come back with the skills that they've got and the confidence that they've got, and bring that to their club and share that by example or by coaching or whatever. They're busy people, but all I'm asking is that county players do their best. That's all we can ask them, and they do their best with their club and their county. And that this notion that they need to be protected from, unprofessional activity at club level where they may be more liable to get damaged is not right. It's not right.
But what would you say, Noel, to the notion that you're slightly old-fashioned, that this is a view you mentioned when you played? Obviously, you mentioned where the 90s and the noughties, where it started to creep in, and then it's obviously become exacerbated a lot more, that this is just modern. This is the modern way of sport. This is the modern way of the GAA. You're dewy-eyed and looking back at and harking back to a time that now was no longer with us, and this is progress, and you just have to get with the program, and you're not really understanding how the modern Gaelic GAA player works.
Well, I would answer that by saying that the people who are in that bubble are not understanding what really matters. They're understandably perhaps getting caught up in all the detail about I mean, I've seen recent articles describing the dramatic increase in workload and hence the dramatic need for much, much increased preparation and recovery and nutritional changes on foot of the new rules in football. And I'm saying, this is getting worse. This is just because with that approach, they can do even less with their club. Now, I would take the view that my view and the view of many, it's not restricted to the older generation. I don't think it is anyway. But the really important part of this process is that it gives clubs a chance to have a voice. And it doesn't happen too often that the clubs get a chance to have a voice at the top table at Congress about something that is of immediate practical relevance to them. And what I'm anxious, and I might use this opportunity, is to plead with the clubs to get involved in this debate. And as part of our preparation, we're hosting a couple of information webinars next week, Monday and Wednesday. And the details of those should have made their ways to the clubs via their county secretaries, who've been very helpful. They should have got the motion and the details about this and the details about a survey that we're hoping that the secretaries will fill in. Just 2 simple questions. Do you think county players should play more with their clubs, number 1? And number 2, do you think that should be by rule, not by persuasion? Those are 2 questions. We just want to get some feedback about that because we may have got this wrong. I don't think we have in terms of club sentiment, but we really want the clubs to get involved. So to attend one of our webinars Monday and Wednesday, and the details of all of these and of the survey are on Clontarf's website. That, to me, it gets a debate going. It brings this out into the open, because what was happening with the split season debate was all of the debate was about how it has solved a problem, which was the club championship fixture schedule uncertainty issue. That's now been solved. What was not being addressed at all was this unintended consequence of the split season, which is to dramatically worsen the separation of county players from their clubs. And it is quite possible to retain certainty about club fixtures outside the split season. We've modelled it. It can be done. It absolutely can be done. And by adopting this principle, you can retain that. And as well as that, you can bring county players back to their clubs, re-establish that core link between them. And by so doing, celebrate what is absolutely unique and special about the GAA.
Congress, Noel.
Sorry?
Congress, the
Congress.
actual practicalities of Congress. I mean, I don't know how many delegates go into the room, how many vote, how many are properly mandated to vote, how many are persuaded by different vested interests.
Well, I don't either.
How much trust have you got in the process that if you can go in and deliver all of the things that you've just outlined and articulated to us, that you can then fully invest yourself into the democratic process and let the cards then fall where they may?
Well, I'm going to do that anyway, because that's democracy, and what will make this work for me is if the clubs engage and discuss it locally and form an opinion. If those clubs bring that to the relevant county committee meeting that happens before Congress, and the county secretaries they have the responsibility to discuss motions with the clubs at a meeting before Congress. So let's assume that all happens, and it should happen. Then we go along, and my understanding is that it might be me this time, it might not. I think the club that brings the motion has the entitlement or is asked to speak first. So
Speak on the floor, yeah.
And then there's response back, and the voting, as I understand it, is secret.
Yeah.
And that's how it works. Now, what worked for us in Dublin was doing the groundwork before the AGM, so that when we had a lot of discussion with a lot of clubs, they knew the issue, and they came ready to vote. Very few people spoke for or against the motion on the night. In fact, most people spoke on the night. You might remember, Rory, spoke against it.
Correct.
But when we moved the vote, it was overwhelming.
Yeah.
So, and the way it works in Congress is the number of votes per county is based on the number of clubs the county has. I think you've got 1 delegate per 10 clubs, up to a maximum of 10, let's say. So the maximum, the the CCC delegate or the Central Council delegate from each county has a vote as well. But the most any county will have is 10. And we need to get 60% to pass this. There's usually about 280 delegates, I think, eligible to vote at it. So that's our target. And I have absolutely no idea how it's going to go.
Yeah. Well, look, I
Yeah.
think it's very laudable, and I think it's a very worthwhile exercise. And if anything, I think what it does more than anything above all else, it is a reassertion of the values and the principles. I think the values is the big thing for me with this. I think the GAA is starting to, I think the values are being chipped away at and eroded slowly and slowly, year after year. We can see it at the ground level. It's more difficult to get people to do voluntary roles. It's more difficult to get people to fall in, help out, coach, give up their time. Everyone's cash rich these days, time poor. No one wants to do anything for free anymore. People are busy, busy, busy. And I think one thing that I always felt the GAA was just a sort of bedrock that you could come back on, where it was just a sort of a de-stressor and you could go down. But even that seems to be slightly chipped away at and slightly eroded. And I think what Noel's motion does for me is it may be a straw in the wind, and it may be, finger in the dike stuff and all of those types of things. But at least it's a little pushback to say, look, hang on a second. This organization was founded on some core principles of, we give more than we take. And I think from that point of view alone, giving it a voice, even if it doesn't get passed, I think will make it a worthwhile experience.
Well, don't talk about that about not being passed. We would refuse to say that. But if I could just say one more thing, I have a belief and a trust in the GAA. It is a fantastic organization. Now, it reflects Irish society, the good and the bad. So we have the drink culture, we have the gambling, we have the violence on the pitches, but we have the true goodness of Irish people expressed in the playing and the non-playing aspects of GAA clubs. It is wonderful. And I am fundamentally optimistic that the GAA will do the right thing here. In the long term or the short term, that it will work and that we will turn the ship in the right direction and just protect it from becoming another professional sports organisation, which will alienate and lose its volunteers if that happens.
Well, it's a big test for the future of the organisation, no doubt about it. But good luck in the coming weeks, Noel. I'm sure there's a lot of legwork to be done on the back of it. And if people want to have a look, give us a last recommendation. Where can they find the information? Where can they see the survey? And how can they go and get informed about this? Well,
first of all, they should have got the information about the details of the motion, the details about the webinars we're having, and the details of the survey through their county secretary. So the first thing is, if they haven't got it, please check with the county secretaries. If they haven't got it, it's all on the Clontarf GAA website. Go there. There's a page. There's a banner there, and there's a page giving the full outlines of the motion, all the details, the pros and cons, the arguments for and against it, what progress we've made, and there's a separate small sheet with details of the two Zoom webinars, Monday at 8 o'clock, Wednesday at 8 o'clock, and also a link to the short survey, which we'd like to have completed by next Friday. So that we can then, that survey will inform us about, are we right or wrong about how people are thinking. And it'll also be nice to be able to share that publicly. Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, best of luck, Noel, and thanks so much for joining us on the podcast. Thank you. And thank you, Rory. Thank you, Jacqui. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar.